Florida's where I spend my time. From the beaches of Pensacola, yeah, to the pirates in the Keys. Something in the air down here, man, even a blind man can see. Yeah. Florida free, Florida forever. Under God, we'll never waver. Don't tread on me, just let us be. Florida strong, Florida free. Oldest city in the nation, swamps in the Everglades, beer and oysters in Appalachia. Man, we've got it made. Charter fishing in Destin, golf at the TPC. There's legends that's living here, man, just like you and me, yeah. Florida free, Florida forever. Under God, we'll never waver. Yeah. Don't tread on me, just let us be. Florida strong, Florida free.
Today's show is sponsored by Farmer Joe's Fresh Market, located at 1401 Southwest Pine Island Road in beautiful Cape Coral, Florida. I'm going to be enjoying some nice, gorgeous ribeyes from Farmer Joe's on the grill tonight. Everything you need and more, Lee County's greatest grocery store, Farmer Joe's. We also want to thank the great people at International Marble. It's family owned and operated, serving all of Southwest Florida. For all your marble dreams, call International Marble at 239-878-2200. That's 239-878-2200. Well, we're back. Mr. Ford O'Connell here, veteran political analyst, attorney, professor, author, one of the great political minds that breaks it down to facts. You can find Ford on most reputable news outlets and at FordO'Connell.com, and follow him at Ford O'Connell on X. Welcome to Cracker Culture. I'm Smokin Joe. Ford, so much has happened since we last talked. I know you were covering CPAC. Brother, that had to be one of the most off-the-chain, refreshing jobs to have last weekend. It had to be a blast, man. Tell us some excitement there at CPAC, Ford.
Elon Musk bringing out the chainsaw. That was the excitement. Obviously, President Trump delivered a pretty power-packed speech, too, and he knows exactly how to make news. I'll tell you who else gave a great little speech, too, was Tom Homan. I mean, my God. He came out there and said, I don't care about your feelings. If you got any problems, you can go stick it. And I'll tell you, when he does that, I mean, people go crazy. And look, in Tom Homan's benefit, I think in the months of February for Biden, we were averaging 150, 160,000 illegal alien encounters. In the month of February, it was 8,200 and something for Trump. You sure we needed an immigration bill, or do we just need someone to actually uphold the law? There you go. Yeah. Think about that.
Yeah, Holman was on fire. I mean, I was trying to watch it on and off a clip, and then Holman took the stage, and I was stuck, man. I was like, here it is, man. I got to see this right here. This is it.
Yeah, he does not play around. He tells it just like it is. And anyone who, tries to cross him like the governor of New York, it's going to be a FAFO moment, and we're going to find out.
Absolutely. Well, Ford, we have to talk first about this Ukrainian president, Timu Zelensky. Uh, what a pompous little SOB he is. Let's play a clip and let the viewers decide.
You've allowed yourself to be in a very bad position, and he happens to be right about it.
From the very beginning of the war.
You're not in a good position. You don't have the cards right now. With us, you start having cards. Right? You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III. And what you're doing is very disrespectful to the country, this country, that's backed you far more than a lot of people said they should have.
Have you said thank you once? This entire meeting? No, in this entire meeting, have you said thank you? Offer some words of appreciation for the United States of America and the president who's trying to save your country.
Please, you think that if you will speak very loudly about the war,
He's not speaking loudly. He's not speaking loudly. I don't think you'd be a tough guy without the United States. And your people are very brave. But you're either going to make a deal or we're out. And if we're out, you'll fight it out. I don't think it's going to be pretty, but you'll fight it out. But you don't have the cards.
Man, Ford, what was he thinking? On what planet did he think it was appropriate to come in dressed and acting the way he was?
Yeah, I mean, the eye rolling, the shrugging of shoulders, the entire body language. Look, this was a very easy thing. All he had to do was wear a tie, walk into the White House, sign a deal, say thank you, and eat lunch. But he couldn't do that. That's exactly how Vladimir Zelensky is. And remember, this is the third time we've been trying to sign this agreement. He refused to sign it in Kiev. He refused to sign it in Munich. Remember when J.D. Vance went out to Munich? That was why he was out there. They refused to sign it. So this time around, he decided, and basically Zelensky gambled the wrong. He thought he could make Trump look bad in front of the media with about 10 minutes ago in their meeting where he said, well, I want security guarantees or I'm not signing it. That was the whole thing for 40 minutes. Essentially, they had no problem until Zelensky and a reporter started talking about security guarantees. And the problem is if Trump gives Zelensky security guarantees, that he doesn't have a hand to play with Vladimir Putin.
Well, and I follow like the Russian report, and I was listening to that guy, and what he said made perfect sense. He said, y'all understand, Zelensky was totally set up by your liberal left. They're the ones that told him to try to come in and bully and not give up the mineral rights just to keep this going. They don't want the war to stop. And
I think that's exactly right, is that Zelensky doesn't want peace. And then you've got a lot of Democrats in Washington, D.C. who are advising him, including, I believe, Senator Chris Murphy of Connecticut. And they don't seem to understand. 72% of the American public wants this war to end tomorrow. Less than 24% say maybe fight it out in case you can win. And there is no way that Ukraine can win this war. They're down to the nubs. But again, this is the military-industrial complex. The Europeans, though, finally admit they're like, oh, we have Zelensky's back, but we can't do it without the United States. And that's the point. The idea was the mineral agreement was going to be economic security, and that was going to bring about the idea that Vladimir Putin said, you know what? We should probably have peace.
Yeah, it's incredible. Like I said, and I think that Zelensky has just sealed his fate in history with that last meeting with Trump and J.D. Vance. And I'm proud of J.D. Vance for that. Was great interaction with a president and a vice president, some of the best I've ever seen.
Ever since that debate with Tim Walz, J.D. Vance is just turning heads in politics because he really has a quick learning curve. And you're absolutely right. I think one of the greatest things he said was, oh, yeah, and by the way, President Zelensky, you backed Kamala Harris in the last election. That was just, that was just a mic drop moment. But look, J.D. Vance is showing himself to be a competent and reliable number two. Have you ever seen a vice president in a room like that, delivering what I call Batman and Robin, good cop, bad cop? It's pretty impressive. And that means that Donald Trump has a lot of trust in J.D. Vance.
Absolutely. Well, before we discuss DOGE, all the things that they've uncovered, I want to look at the lunacy displayed by the liberal left over transparency. Basically, they don't want it seen. So let's look at this.
God damn it, shut down the Senate! We are at war!
Fire Elon Musk. Elon Musk took control of our country's financial nuclear codes.
What we not gonna do is stand around while they pull this bull. We are gonna be in your face. We are gonna be on your.
We will see you in the courts, in Congress, in the streets. Elon Musk is a Nazi Nepo baby. Nobody elected your. This is not Elon Musk's country.
We've got to fight back. You've got to be on the streets tomorrow.
Lord, how incredible, how unbelievably savage these people have become because something is going to be seen.
Well, look, move over Trump derangement syndrome because there's a new sheriff in town. It's called Elon Musk derangement syndrome, and they don't seem to understand the Democrats. According to the latest Harvard-Harris poll, 76% of Americans want to see a full-scale audit of the federal government. And another 60+% of Americans think you should have a DOGE-like agency that is transparent and is looking to make government more efficient and cheaper to the taxpayer. I mean, all this makes sense. Elon Musk has Democrats defending the indefensible. That is the most amazing part. First, it was a constitutional crisis. Well, guess what? Stephen Miller set them straight when it came to the vesting clause. Then they started saying, well, it's chaotic. Well, here's the problem. The Democrats don't want fat trimmed off the government because they've been using that fat from the government to pay their allies to stay in power.
Yeah, it's incredible. And look, I am very excited about what Elon and this DOGE agenda has come up with. I mean, and I want to see what's in Fort Knox. Who wouldn't?
I'm with you. Look, I'm with you. Anyone who's tried to defend $2 million being spent on Sesame Street in Iraq, honestly, just should get out. But I'm with you about Fort Knox. There's a lot of things. Something else I pointed out on another show is that the military, the Department of Defense, is still using punch cards to tabulate rank promotions in the military. Punch cards. Think about what I just said. That is 1950s technology, and that's what we're using in the DOD. Other ones are using floppy disks. Look, what is happening here is very, very eye-opening, and if the media was halfway honest about it, they'd be really impressed. You even have J.P. Morgan President Jamie Dimon, no friend to Republicans, saying, you know what, the government is fat, bloated, and incompetent. And he's absolutely right.
Well, I just think it's remarkable. I mean, and I can't wait to see more and more of this come out. Let's talk about Jake Tapper. Can you get any more in the crapper than Jake Tapper right now? With the release of his new book, I want to remind our viewers of Jake the Tapper we knew. And let's just play this here.
I think what we see on stage with Joe Biden, Jake, is very clearly a cognitive decline. Okay. That's what I'm referring to. It makes me uncomfortable.
You are no. It's so amazing. It's so amazing to me that
try and figure out an answer.
A cognitive decline.
Well, when you're trying to tell me that what I was suggesting was
I think that you were mocking his stutter. Yeah, I think you were mocking his stutter, and I think you have absolutely no standing to diagnose somebody's cognitive decline. I would think that somebody in the Trump family would be more sensitive to people who do not have medical licenses diagnosing politicians from afar.
Online commentators have launched on the journalists, with this person saying Jake Tapper wrote a book on Biden's mental decline and the cover-up by the media. He was the cover-up. This person agreed, saying you can't make this stuff up. Jake Tapper went from vehemently attacking any assertions of Joe Biden's cognitive decline and the lies to cover it up, to writing a book about Joe Biden's cognitive decline and the lies to cover it up. And this person just could not fathom the hypocrisy, saying this is like committing a crime and then investigating yourself for that crime. And this commentator is calling it a cash grab. Takes an amazing amount of hubris to spend 5 years ignoring Biden's clear cognitive decline only to cash in on a book about it when he's finally out of office.
I mean, Ford, come on, brother. What is he thinking?
There's a special place in journalism hell for Jake Tapper after this. I mean, this is the guy who knowingly covered up Biden's mental decline, attacked anyone who questioned Biden's mental acuity in any way, then created a lie saying, well, Joe Biden has a stutter. Look, I've watched Joe Biden for 30 years in politics. That man never met a camera he didn't like until his brain became mush. Okay, he's never had a stutter. Somehow he managed to get a stutter in his late 70s. That's something new, even for me to find out. But the idea is that he is now calling it a cover-up, and he's going to blow the door off the cover-up that he covered up. That's the insanity of the whole thing. And that's why trust in the media is at an all-time low. 36% of Americans, according to Gallup, have no trust whatsoever in any form of media. That is the highest ever. That is higher than some trust and a lot of trust. So when you think about that, that is pretty shocking. But you know what? These Beltway media people who covered Donald Trump for the last 9 years, every single day somehow manage to beclown themselves when I think it can't get any worse.
I agree. And that's just good news for us guys like me, because people are going to start to look for their news from people like us, people that's just got no dog in the hunt. I mean, I'm not running for office no time soon. I just like seeing the right person doing the job we're paying them to do and doing it effectively. That's it. Just do the job effectively, and I'm happy.
Look, I'm with you, but that seems to be very, very hard to do. And what's unfortunate is the job of journalists, just overall, is to guard the public interest. Okay, that is the real job of journalists. Unfortunately, we have a set of journalists now, particularly in corporate media, that have a greater interest in protecting the government from the people than the people from the government. And that should scare everyone.
Absolutely. Go ahead. All right, everybody, it's that time where we get ready to give everybody
man's trash.
Here. So it begins. The competitors are beginning to get known. Who will the future governor of Florida be? Lord, I have a clip I want to play, and let's talk.
Probably seen his face. It's all over billboards across the state of Florida. His TV and radio commercials play all over the state. But could John Morgan be the next governor of Florida? Or how about Casey DeSantis, the current governor's wife?
Florida's race for governor has a clear frontrunner, U.S. Congressman Byron Donalds. He recently received President Trump's endorsement and appeared on Fox News with Sean Hannity to talk about his plans for the state.
I want to turn Florida into the financial hub of the world.
And Commissioner of Agriculture Wilton Simpson has also been mentioned as a potential Republican candidate for governor. Meanwhile, a lot remains to be seen on the Democratic side.
Well, Ford, what is your take on this? And I also want to there are other people that also we're looking at for governor. And Ford, what do you see? What do you make of all this?
Well, because Byron Donalds received President Trump's endorsement, he's definitely the front runner. I think part of the reason why he was endorsed so early is I think there was a poll out of North Florida, which was actually showing Casey DeSantis with a pretty handy lead over Byron Donalds in the Republican primary. I mean, I think the question here is, how many people actually get in this? Does Wilton Simpson get in this and try to play spoiler? Does Ashley Moody possibly get in this race as well? I mean, there's a lot of Matt Gaetz could throw his name in there. At some point, you could have somebody conceivably win the gubernatorial race with about 22% of the Republican primary vote. So, I mean, it's anyone's guess about what's going to happen. But right now, I'd say that Byron Donalds is in the best position. And obviously, having Donald Trump's endorsement, Donald Trump's pollster, goes a long way to making sure you help build your name ID. I think the key here is Casey DeSantis has the highest name ID of anyone being mentioned, but Byron Donalds seems to have the infrastructure and the tools to make the case that he's going to be not only the Republican nominee, but probably the next governor of Florida.
Well, what about now when we look at John Morgan? I mean, his face is all over everywhere. And, he's promoted legalizing marijuana, and he's not so much running on a Democratic platform this time. He's trying to claim he's some kind of a libertarian at this point. Me and you both know that's a far cry from a libertarian, but what is his chances to making any impact? With the younger crowd, and I think about the younger crowd that, they're smoothed up by his, videos, doing his Thanksgiving turkey videos, Stone and stuff like that. They kind of get into John. What do you think? Does he have a chance?
Well, obviously he has a chance if he wins the Democratic nomination. He's one of the highest branded people in the state of Florida. I mean, his commercials go all the way to Washington, D.C. I can't get rid of the darn guy. Every single time I turn on the TV, I see Morgan and Morgan. It's too much for me. But he could conceivably win. But I think the key here is that we forget about is that the Republicans have 1 million voter registration advantage, and your independent voters or your non-affiliated voters lean slightly right by a couple of points. So if everyone turns out to vote, chances are the Republican nominee is going to win. Now, 4 or 5 years ago, maybe 8 years ago, John Morgan would have been a formidable candidate. And frankly, we all know he's got the money to do it. The only question is, does John Morgan want to light up $100 million on fire? I don't know.
Man, well, I agree with you that I think Byron is probably going to be the front runner starting out. And me being the guy I am, I'm just going to say it right here. I'm going to ride with Matt Taylor, that Matt the welder kid, all the way up until I can't ride with him no more right now. So hopefully we're going to try to get him on the show.
Yeah, I hear you. I think one thing that we need to think about, because there's two things that are moving in parallel at the same time, the governor's race and obviously the Senate race, which obviously Ashley Moody is right now the fill-in for. I think the question here is, what does Ron DeSantis want? If Ron DeSantis wants to broker a deal to become the next senator of Florida with Donald Trump, he might well be able to do it. And I think that's why we're hearing a lot of Casey DeSantis talk, even though the polls tell you she could be pretty formidable, even with Byron having Trump's endorsement.
And I can tell you, I don't know that it's out in the public airways yet, but Lord Mellow's seat, I heard that Dr. Drew Montez Clark is going to seek that seat.
Yeah, I mean, he's tried to win it before, so that would not be a shock to me that he wants to try to run for it again. I mean, we'll see what happens. We got to see what that Republican primary is like and how many Millerites seem to be going around the water cooler at the same time.
I hear you. Well, there's allegations that Lyle Spencer Roach is cozying up to Congressman Donalds in an attempt to get his endorsement if he decides to seek office. Now, everybody knows how most of us feel about the Roach, but this wouldn't look good for Congressman Donalds. I would like to remind him of the negative things Roach posted on social media. In one post, calling General Flynn QAnon right wing, calling them Holocaust deniers, calling out Patriot Al Oaks as an anarchist. Spencer Roach is an anti-Trumper, and we must keep this undesirable out of Florida politics. And it's got to be Never Roach. And just to say, I've got the receipts. I want Spencer to know that we keep everything. All the media stuff that he posted, we've got it all. And if Byron Donalds was to endorse such a cancer on Florida as Spencer Roach, I don't think I could support Byron.
Well, let's put it this way. I don't think that Byron and his wife Erica are going to use their political capital on Spencer Roach when they have such a pressing gubernatorial primary to deal with. I mean, I just don't see it. And remember, he's also written some very negative articles, I think both at floridapolitics.com and maybe in the newspaper saying bad things about Trump. So, I mean, that alone, people should be using against Spencer Roach if he decides to run. Because, again, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, two things are true. Right now, Donald Trump's more popular than he's ever been before. And in the state of Florida, particularly in Southwest Florida, Donald Trump is about 99% liked when you look at the voters.
Absolutely. Well, for it at this time, I want to welcome Advocate Jacqueline Perez from Island Park, and she's here to tell us some things that she's uncovered in the school district. And we also have former school board member Gwen Gittens. She joins the show to discuss if a conservative approach could bring more finances for schools and students. We want to welcome you ladies to the show. And I guess we're going to start this off at the school board's motto: if you see something, say something. Lee County School Board, which every member campaigned on keeping the school district free from political influence. This Tuesday, the board is said to be seeking to add Ballard Partners on as a consultant. Ladies, Jacqueline, let's begin with you. What can you tell us about this deal with Ballard Partners?
They're on the action meeting at 6 p.m. on Tuesday. They have it on the agenda to hire Ballard Partners for the sum of $270,000 annually, plus any reimbursable expenses of travel, vehicle, whatever. It's unlimited. So it could be a lot more than that. It could be $500,000 for all we know. In the history of the school district, we have never hired a lobbyist firm and paid them that much money. And as a matter of fact, we have Gray Robinson presently as our lobbyist, and we're only paying them $7,000 a month. This is a big jump. This is $23,000 a month or more. And why are we having two lobbyist firms represent us? We hired two of Terry Miller's contacts as government liaisons. We created positions after the superintendent, or just right before the superintendent, Denise Carlin came into play or was elected. And she was also a Miller candidate. You know, everything ties back into Terry Miller and having total control over the district. And several years ago, I remember all the fighting that took place, that everyone wanted a school district that was non-political. And this is the most political moves I've ever seen. Almost criminal if you think about it. It's almost as if Denise Carlin is paying everyone back for helping getting her elected. So now we have two government liaisons who have access to cell phone costs, any kind of reimbursable rates. One is making almost $130,000 a year, the other one over $100,000 a year. Then you have the contract with Gray Robinson. Then you have the contract now coming tomorrow night that's going to be signed for almost $300,000. I think that's insane. But you have board members who also collect, at that same board meeting, they're requesting thousands of dollars of travel expenses so they can go lobby in Tallahassee. How many lobbying can they do? They also pay the FSBA, which has their own lobbyists, over $20,000 a year to lobby for them. Isn't that, that's crazy to me. It's ludicrous. Yet let me mention one more thing. They haven't paid their teachers monies that they owed them for covering classes during their planning time. And there are teachers that have messaged me through Facebook and private messages, emailed me email proof that they worked and covered, some of them covered 180 classes, 240 classes, and they're receiving peanuts or nothing to what they were promised for covering these additional courses, these classes during their planning time. So they don't have the money to pay teachers the money that they owe them. They don't have the monies to, Spout had to take them to court, and they won the court case because they weren't paying the bus drivers their overtime. They had to take them to court to pay their overtime. But yet they have these millions of dollars where they're throwing out there for all this lobbyists. And as elected officials, you would think that they can lobby for themselves. They have a whole organization that represents them in the state of Florida, FSBA.
But explain to me, why does a school district need a lobbying firm like Ballard Partners? What does that really do for the students' education?
Well, there's two things here. What bothers me is that you're spending money left and right, and obviously the scores have not improved. In fact, as we know, in Florida, yes, Lee County is one of the worst. That's insane when you consider the amount of money spent per student in Lee County. Now, when it comes to Ballard Partners, they are the most powerful lobbying firm in the state of Florida. Now, what I would say about this is why do you need to have two if you're going to sign a deal with Ballard Partners? That's a great question right there, because it seems to me you're just throwing money down a well when it comes to that. But remember, Ballard Partners is the type of thing that whoever wins this governor's race in Florida is going to be tied to Ballard Partners in one way or another. So if you actually want the ear of the governor or you want the ear of the Speaker of the House, Perez, guess who you're going to go to? Ballard Partners. I'm just in the wrong line of work. Let me just make that out.
We all are. But you make a great point, which I missed. We have one of the lowest achievement rates in 10 years. Last year, we had our interim superintendent finally declare it publicly. We have declined every year for the last 10 years, more and more and more. And they are playing with the numbers of the cohort rates of graduations. They're not the actual numbers. We have a less number than what they're representing. It's close to between 15 and 20% of the student population is not graduating. That's a big percentage in Lee County of kids that probably won't be able to get jobs. That increases the crime rate. That lowers the values of our properties. We won't get the best doctors that want to come and relocate and build a family, have a family here because we don't have the best schools. You know, there's so many factors to this.
Can I wait on the lobbyist piece, Joe?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Okay. So for one thing, I think it was last year or whatever, when there was an interim superintendent, the comment was made that, let me start out first, the lobbying, well, the liaison position that Denise had before she became superintendent is still there, and that's the position they're using for these two ladies. So my point was, when they gave Denise that position, the comment was, oh, she'll do a great job because she has a lot of connections in Tallahassee. Well, what has changed? What's changed is our superintendent reports to the governor. So the governor, they have the ear of the governor totally right up to the top. Why do you need to spend all this money with FSBA and all these lobbying firms and all of that when you just say to the governor, this is what we're trying to do? Because he has the final veto power for anything that goes through. I can recall them saying, oh, one other point on that. Last year with the interim superintendent, the comment was made, we don't need that position any longer because of the makeup of the board and the relationship we have with Tallahassee. We don't need all of that lobbying. So where did that go? That comment just went out in the air and didn't mean anything, which leads me to my next point. You know, when we hear conservative, 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 and to me, conservative used to mean less and smaller government and not having, the government involved in your day-to-day, how you raise your child and all that kind of stuff. It was, you paid your taxes, and of course you spoke up if something was wrong, but government was smaller. And today, conservative seems to have, and maybe you can help me with this, be more government, more restrictions, more details. We want to cover this. We want to do this. I mean, I get the thing with books, but why should they, tell us what books to read? The parents should be up in arms if there's a book that their child shouldn't read. But why is government stepping in? So I don't understand conservative. And if I'm, in my knowledge of politics and all that, how many people don't understand anymore what conservative means?
Well, Ford, she makes a good point, because I consider myself conservative, but in Lee County, I do not consider our local politicians conservative by no stretch of the imagination.
No, that's because most of them are self-dealing, and that is exactly why Lee County schools are so inefficient and so poor at delivering the product. Because I've always said this, the primary road out of poverty runs by the schoolhouse, but for some reason in Lee County, we're hurting ourselves. Jackie's absolutely right. We're hurting ourselves, driving down property values, doing everything wrong because the schools are not very good. And not only that, they're sucking in more and more money. We're just throwing more and more money every year at it, and the numbers are getting worse and worse. So $3 billion liberal doesn't even seem to matter here. How about just efficient and caring about the student? I mean, that's why actually you listen to Governor DeSantis start to propose that Florida DOGE, Department of Government Efficiency. And I got to tell you, first place he needs to be going outside the property tax, because they're tied to it, is the schools.
Now, Ford, now that you brought that up, our comptroller Kevin Carnes has decided that he's going to form his own version of DOGE. So this is the criminals investigating themselves.
Fox and the hen house. But here's what I don't understand with the DOGE, especially in Florida. The governor and Republicans basically have been in charge for the last 6 to 7 years. So if you're now going to do DOGE on Florida, you got to look at what did you do for the last 6 or 7 years. Because if you cut out anything within that time period, you're saying the problem is you.
And when did you write a complaint to the governor reporting the corruption?
When we talk about waste, fraud, and abuse, and when I did my letter to the governor laying it all out, I had help from Terry Miller, and a lot of people in the Republican Party and conservatives helped me to, once I did it, they helped me to edit and all of that kind of stuff and make sure that it got to the governor's office.
And what was the outcome of that?
Well, all of a sudden, I got phone calls from the governor's office. I actually met with FBI agents were interviewing me. There was a lot of stuff going on that I couldn't talk about. But all of a sudden, and Ford, you kind of hit on it when you said 8 years ago, Morgan would have had a better chance. 8 years ago, 6 years ago, whatever, suddenly things changed. And rather than getting politicians that are best for the position, it became totally political. And otherwise, like when I first ran, I got 56.7% to win over the person I was running against.
Well, at that moment, I always bring this up, roughly coincides with Connie Mack. Once Connie Mack was gone, that's when Terry Miller started having a field day in Lee County.
Yes.
That's 100% correct. That is 100% correct.
And there's quotes out there now. What was that quote, Jacqueline, from Armored Persons saying, we need to keep government and politics out of the schools. Yeah. Well, he raised his hand and said, I do. And that was the floodgates started to happen.
Right. We have an enormous amount. I don't know if Joe and Ford got the opportunity to look at the salaries that I requested and the number of positions that have been created with this new regime we have at the school district that are supposed to be very conservative and represent us as Republicans. And they have created so many redundant positions of coordinators, executive directors, chiefs. It is the most top-heavy time in 50 years that I went back as far as I can go. We have never had these many chiefs at the district ever. We have 4 regional superintendents. We have 3 deputy superintendents plus the superintendent. We have a number amount of coordinators, positions that were created, executive directors under the executive directors. It is enormous, the amount of money that's being funneled just to the district, not to the schools, not to programs, not to paying teacher salaries, but to the district itself.
But Jacqueline, the thing that's happening there is, and just in your mind, look at the board. Look and visualize what a board meeting looks like and what it sounds like. There is absolutely no one that will speak up, have the knowledge and the details and the ability to say, wait a minute. Either they're afraid to do it or they don't have the knowledge to do it. That's why one of the reasons I'm not there, because my mouth was just too big.
I agree with Gwen on this point. They vote, they lock in step. There's no separation in that board right now. And when what she says is true. When she says afraid, look, I tried my best to feel like that Miss Giovanelli would be maybe a kink in the chain, but she's caved. I mean, I'm sorry, she's caved. She is the weak link, and I don't know why that if you've got any moral behind you, you don't step up and say, wait, I'm here for the children. Y'all are here for the job. Let's have a, we don't need all to spend all this money. If there ever was somebody, an outside DOGE or to look into something, it ought to be the Lee County School District. I can promise you there's so much they would find there, it would spin people's heads off.
Right.
A $3 billion budget with almost the same amount of student population we had several years ago at 1.7 billion. So we're spending almost double that amount of money for almost the same student population with a very top heavy district. But Joe, you said something interesting just now about the board. In December, they voted to reduce their work time. So they only come in now one time a month, and they're still receiving their entire full-time pay plus benefits and these additional reimbursements. But teachers couldn't be paid their additional monies for their additional work that they paid during this crisis that we're having, where we're hemorrhaging and losing teachers. I think we're short. I spoke to Robert Daniels today. He told me we're short 500 teachers. And after many of them not being paid now, making a decision that was made that many of them were giving peanuts or nothing, a lot of them are going to be leaving come June. They're not coming back. They don't want to be teachers anymore.
Yeah,
well,
and Robert Daniels is the spokesman for, was it TALF, right?
No, is it?
He's a TALF representative, yes.
He's a TALF representative. And after this show, I think I'm going to add a little one-on-one with Robert into this show. But Ford, can you imagine? They come in, took the job. They cut their workload in half. They reduced their meetings in half, and you can't make this up.
And they actually have one less employee. And the op-ed I just recently did, I said, if they took half their salary, we could hire 3 to 5 teachers, 5 to 6 paraprofessionals to help in the classroom, and 8+ bus drivers. And I'm sorry.
Ford.
I mean, look, I think what Gwen's saying is very common sense. I just think that most people in Lee County don't know this, and they don't really take the time to go into. I think what scares me the most is what Jackie said is you're basically dealing with the same student population. We went from 1.7 billion to 3 billion. That means the administrative state within Lee County has basically doubled in size basically over the last 5 to 6 years. That is scary, because then when it comes back to the school board, they're afraid because it's about job security. Yes. And basically they get out of line. Gwen knows this. You get out of line, guess what happens? You're just not going to be reelected. And that's the problem. That is the cronyism. That is the corruption that is going on in Lee County. And that's why, unfortunately, Lee County's children are losing.
Yeah,
and that's the threat that they always say. If you don't, step in line, we'll make sure that you're not there next time. I mean, I had people to say to me all the time, you're more conservative than conservatives. I said, I know that. But just because I don't have an R behind my name does not mean that mindset changes.
And that's the way you really got to be. You got to think about it. If you think on a common sense, if everybody just quit battling over whose party affiliation is the greater domination, and just think, we got to come together on common sense issues. Our children are common sense issues. We don't need to separate that through political views. And that's one of the biggest problems we have in our educational system right now.
Totally agree.
Yes, I agree.
And so, guys, we're coming to the end of the show, and I want you to know these ladies come out here. Jacqueline, tell everybody that they could come out to the Lee County School Board. Let them know, they come out and speak out on this. Let them know what's going on tomorrow.
Tomorrow night, 6 p.m. is the action meeting where we'll be allowed to speak our one time a month and express our displeasure with them adding another contract and all these positions and this very bloated administration that we have there, where we're not paying our employees, and our achievement rates and our graduation rates are not improving with all this expenditures. So please, everyone should be so concerned. Everyone should be so involved. Your property taxes, the highest costs and your property taxes are for the school district. Everyone should be concerned about how that money is being spent. And if our children aren't being properly educated and employees are being treated like crap and not being paid what they should be paid, we should be all concerned and up in arms about this.
But I think that's March 4th, 2025 at 6 p.m. at the Lee County School Board. Make sure you're there. Gwen, what was you having to say there?
Well, what I'm saying is I agree with what Jacqueline is saying, but because things are so lopsided and politics has taken over the district, you've lost a lot of people that would come to a meeting and make a comment because they feel, for what? They're not going to listen to me unless I say what they want me to say in lockstep.
And I agree with you. And I'm going to tell you the reason for what. This is why I do this show. I want you to come out, let your voice heard, even though you think it's for nothing else, but for you to say what you got to say. At some point, someone from outside this area with some real juice is going to say, hey, listen to these people. They're pleading for help with their government, with their school district. And that's why I do the show. Ford, what you got going on, brother?
Yeah, we're going to have the joint address to Congress tomorrow night at the same time as the school board meeting. And Trump says he's going to bring the heat. Tune in on the television.
All right, very good. I want to thank all of everybody for joining me and Ford, Jacqueline Perez, Miss Gwen Gittins, great people. You can follow them on their social media. We'll be back soon. I'm Smokin Joe with the Crack Culture Podcast. We love you, Florida. Love, peace, and Gator Grease.
Good night. Thank you.